Hey everybody, Stephen Joy here. I like to talk about the books I'm reading sometimes and how I would use them in D&D. And they cause a little bit of a hot debate every once in a while. People don't like my take on things, perhaps. And that's fine. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. However, this topic is going to be a little bit heavy. And so I want to warn you ahead of time that this is quite a heavy topic, but it's one that I've been interested in for a long time. Ever since I played D&D, actually. The very first time in the 70s. So, I just want to caution anybody who doesn't like, that thinks D&D ought to just be all fun and games and it should just be about fantasy and it should be escapism and it shouldn't have anything real to it. This might not be the video for you. I will make videos for you for sure, but maybe this one you might want to sit this one out. And I'm just going to say that right off the bat. So please, if you don't like controversy, if you don't like tough subjects, if you don't like subjects where you have to embrace new ideas or conceive of possibilities, whatever, then please just stop the video right here and go find something else to watch. I mean that. Please do. And I'll just wait a minute. Okay, thank you. I'm hoping this means if you're continuing to watch this video from here on out, then you don't mind embracing new ideas. You don't mind challenging thought experiments. I hope that's the case. I would love to hear feedback, what anybody might think about this topic that I'm about to get into. So what I'm doing here is I'm in the middle of reading this book, The Rape of the Mind by Joost, Meerloo. I hope I'm saying that right. He's a psychologist, and this book, well, this version was printed in 2015. However, the actual original text is from 1965. So, or sorry, 1956. See, I told you I'm dyslexic. 1956. So it's an older book. Now nothing's been changed as far as I know in the writing of it. In fact, I'm sure it hasn't been. It's just the text right from that time. Now I had heard some reviews of this book and I thought, well, that sounds awfully interesting. So I've gotten further than the first chapter, but this video is on the first chapter and sort of some of the thing that it brought to me. I wasn't even going to make a video on this originally. I was going to make a video on the second chapter, which I'm going to make one about that too, and that's on conditioning and the Pavlovian response and how that pertains to games. But as I was thinking about that, I started thinking more along the lines of the first chapter and the idea of menticide, which basically means brainwashing, and sort of stealthy mental coercion. Now, I'm saying this has been a topic of interest to me because of the way that my family life and the way I was raised as a kid. I find it a very fascinating subject, and I'm not going to go into that here. But to suffice it to say that when I first played D&D, it was a mind-altering experience, is the only way I could really describe it. It had such a profound effect on me. I really have no words. And the interesting thing was I went away from that and I started creating games. I had dreams of games. I wanted to play the game. I couldn't get my hands on the books for about 2 years. So I just spent my time making up my own games, started playing with friends and stuff, and we just made up our own made-up versions of the game because we didn't have the actual rules. And so first, I'm going to go into sort of what is brainwashing or menticide. Now, there was an interesting. Unfortunately, I don't have his name. If I can find it, I'll leave it in down below in the comments. But there was a general who talked about brainwashing during the Korean War. He gives a lecture on it. It's free online. Absolutely fascinating. Well worth listening to. So this Dr. Meerloo. He obviously has a profound understanding of it too, and this really opened my eyes to some things. So one of the things I've noticed, and I made a joke about this online in a comment somewhere or in a video, I'm not sure which, that I thought the reason the OSR sort of community was so big in that we just keep buying books. I know I do. I have a huge collection. It's actually utterly ridiculous. My favorite version of the game is a $7 little book. That's my favorite version of the game. So I don't need any of these other books, but I keep buying them, and I realized it feels like I'm chasing a high. It feels like I'm trying to get back to those first experiences of when I originally played D&D. So how does this tie into this book and menticide or brainwashing? Well, what it is that D&D has sort of exploded over the last few years. It's absolutely amazing. It's just gotten absolutely gigantic and huge. And I find that really fascinating. Now, it could be because, sure, the rule set is a little more refined. It's a little bit, better than, say, the older version. Certainly better than 4th edition. All right, controversies here. Leave the comment. Leave the hate in the comments. No, actually, I don't mind 4th edition D&D. I'm just kidding there. It's more like a war game, though. I mean, let's be honest. But anyway, So it's really exploded in popularity. Now, is that because of the internet? Is it because of YouTube and various different channels? I don't know. But I'm gonna float a hypothesis. And that is, given the current times, I mean, I'm sitting here doing this podcast wondering if we're all going to be alive in a couple weeks because we're on the absolute verge of World War III. I've got to say, that's a little bit stressful. And anybody who's paying attention to current world events probably understands that we're closer right now to things going sideways than we probably even were in the Cuban Missile Crisis. And that's not hyperbole. That's actual. Ships are moving, planes are flying, missiles are being moved around, trains are moving things. It's really frightening. But that aside, with all the other events that have happened, which I'm not going to talk about because I have no idea what YouTube's policy is on stuff like that, but I'm sure you're all quite aware of what I'm talking about. And so I'm not going to talk about those, but I think that you'll see what I'm hinting at here. Okay. So what the biggest misconception about brainwashing is that it involves some kind of torture. And that isn't actually true. It can involve torture. It involves mental torture, but it doesn't have to involve physical torture. One of the most clever torture methods that I've ever heard of that was ever being devised. I don't know why every country doesn't use it, because it's simply brilliant. And that was what MI6 came up with, wherein if they want to break you and get information from you, they just lock you up in a nice cell. They give you nice food. It's comfortable. Everything's great. And then somebody comes and they'll visit with you for 15 minutes, half an hour. But if you talk to them about things they're interested in, and obviously they're interested in what you have to say and the knowledge that you're going to spill, they'll stay a little longer. So you can entice that person to stay and talk to you longer if you start divulging information. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, within a week or two, absolutely guarantee you 99% of people will start letting stuff slip, because we are social creatures and we need social we need people around us. We need a social group, a network. We absolutely crave it. And so the example that was given to me was this guy liked chess, and so the MI6 agent would come in and sit and play a game of chess, but leave. But would have another game if that person started giving out information. Before, it didn't take too long at all, and they had learned everything. So that isn't really brainwashing, but it just shows how torture isn't necessary if you're clever about it. So the thing about brainwashing is that it involves a process of humiliation and confining people. So you want to humiliate them, you want to confine them, and you want to seek chaos into their mind. And you also want to undermine their beliefs, and you want to take away hope for the future. And this is really important. You want to install chaos in the language. So, for example, Stalin had his new faith. And under Stalinism, the new faith was that you had to only talk about certain things and in a certain way. And if you didn't, you were going to lose your job, possibly your life. You were in big trouble. But one thing that they did to sort of unsettle people and to test whether you were indoctrinated or not in the new faith was they created new words and new language. And if you didn't use those new words, you didn't use that new language, then you could be outed as not part of the new faith. So now, when you couple all those sorts of things together, we've had a really tough few years, these last few years. And so what you need also with brainwashing, especially on a larger scale, is like the test of witches. Now, when you do it's called a float test. And basically in certain times in the past when there were, the Salem witch hunts, for example, I'm not sure if they did the float test there, but they certainly did in Europe. They would take a woman or a man accused of witchcraft, and they would tie them by the hands and tie them by the legs, and they would toss them into water. And if that person sank, they weren't a witch, but if that person floated, they were a witch. Now, obviously, and they would be taken out of the water and they would be burnt at the stake publicly, and everybody could see what was happening. So what would happen is you would die either way. If you weren't a witch, you would drown, but if you were a witch, by their standards, I'm not saying it was completely ludicrous, but they would pull you out and burn you at the stake. And it wasn't about dealing with witches. That was never the intention. And they had their book, The Hammer of Witches, and they went around, and mostly burning women at the stake was about property. Usually it was because somebody, the accuser or somebody close to the accuser, wanted that woman's property, so they'd accuse her of witchcraft, knowing that she was dead either way, and then they could acquire the property. That was 90% or more of what the actual cases were about, but they were also about public demonstrations of what would happen to you if you were accused of witchcraft. You would die in this absolutely horrible way. I mean, either way, being burned to death or drowning are absolutely hideous deaths. And so what happens is people can relate to the witch. They can relate to that person because they know that that person isn't doing anything really except just living their life. Except maybe Stalin's New Faith people might. They know it, but they're never going to say it, right? Stalinists would never acknowledge it, but they would still feel it. So these, so a public show trial, for example, would show people that, hey, they can get at you if they want. It doesn't matter who you are. If you don't follow the new faith, they can get at you. And this is really terrifying. And so, but part of the system of brainwashing is, and I'm saying at some level, I'm not saying at a cognitive level or a sort of a conscious level can people relate, but everybody can relate because, again, we're social creatures. So you can relate to that person in the Stalinist show trial. You can relate to that person being burned at the stake. It doesn't matter whether you hate them or not. You can still relate to them. And so that causes a great deal of fear and apprehension and self-policing and a lot of caution in one's own behaviors, which is what brainwashing seeks. It seeks to confuse. It seeks to cause uncertainty in a person. And then it coerces better behavior, because people will think, well, if I don't behave like this, I won't end up in a trial. Or if I don't behave like this, I won't have to go through the float test. If I just give up my property, if I don't, tell whoever it is that wants my property no, when they can't have it, if I just let them have it, because it's better to let them have my family farm than to be burned to death, right? Or to let somebody take advantage. I'm sorry, but that's, that was the situation with the witch trials. It was very often just very, very nasty, predatory people after other people. So it forces, and this is a constant stress that happens, and it ends up undermining people's beliefs. It starts, they'll start telling themselves tales using this language, and they'll start coming to believe it. Now, in proper brainwashing, where you're trying to, say, get a confession out of somebody, you tell the person to keep telling the story over and over again. This is a common police tactic, actually. They'll sit down a suspect and they'll get them to go over the story, and they'll say, can we go over the story one more time? Well, here's the problem with that. This is how memory works. Memory, my understanding of how memory works, okay? This is my understanding of it. Memory basically is a molecule that you build. And every time you go over a memory, you have to disassemble that molecule, and then you reassemble it. So every time you tell a story, or every time you have a memory, that memory changes a little bit. And it doesn't take long. I know for myself, certainly I can tell when this has happened. You're starting to remember the remembering. That it just starts happening. You don't actually remember the thing anymore. So with enough stress and enough pressure on a person, and they keep retelling the story over and over again, you can end up with false confessions. And we see this happen all the time in the legal system. Now, obviously, the police are trying to solve a crime, and if they get the person to retell the story all the time, they're trying to get the person to trip up. And I mean, that's noble. You want to solve crimes, right? The thing is it's also a great way to get people to confess to things that they never did, or to get them to convince themselves of the truth that they did it. So you end up with people who are confessing to crimes completely convinced, utterly convinced that they did the thing when they didn't. And so that's sort of how brainwashing works on the level of the soldier, in a prison, and they're trying to get them to confess to something that they didn't do, or confess that they're part of something that they didn't do. By the time a competent brainwasher is through with them, they're utterly convinced that they did do it. Because of the way the mind works, it's actually not tough to pull off. I'm realizing, because I've read this book. It's horrible. It's horrible. It's a horrible crime, but unfortunately, it's one that I think that all throughout the ages has been used. So, what happens when somebody has been brainwashed, when they've lived for a prolonged period of time, being confined, being humiliated, being lied to, being gaslit, if you like, having the language change, and just basically being in a state of confusion. Their morality is being undermined, their religion's being undermined, their general beliefs are being undermined, however that is. But when someone has gone through that, now this can be in a prison, but this could also be in a school, this could also be at home, this could also just be in the general public. When you go through these incredible pressures, most people will turn to drugs and alcohol and that sort of thing. And so this is what made me think of this. Now, going through this last little while, brought back a lot of memories of my home life. Again, I'm not going to go into details, but I think it in a way kind of allowed a little bit of clarity for me in that. Wait a minute, wait, hold up. I've been here before. Not doing this again. But I think that is why D&D had such a profound effect on me. I don't like drugs. I don't like drinking. I just don't like it. It doesn't make me feel good. Drugs don't make me feel good. Never have, but D&D makes me feel good. That being said, my long-standing question has always been, I've used D&D to explore the world around me. I love putting social issues into D&D, molding them in, and then seeing how they play out. Not just with the players, but with the NPCs and in the world in general. It is sort of how I work out the world, if you like. And I absolutely love doing that. And every time I mention doing that or liking doing that, I get severe pushback. So I'm looking at what's going on right now with this absolutely crazy drug thing that's going on right now. Every city in Canada and the U.S., as far as I could tell, has a shanty town now, or some equivalent to it. It's just amazing, this homeless situation with all of the drug use and everything. And that points squarely to menticide. It really does. It is a massive smoking gun. What in the hell? Seriously, it does. And I think it's something that as a society we need to start addressing at some point, or things are going to go really sideways. Well, they already have, haven't they? We're on the verge of nuclear war. So, hope it doesn't happen. Trust me. So anyway, that was always my question, was how come? Now, I don't understand why I find D&D sort of an escapist drug where I can find solace from all the craziness going around me. I could find it back when I was a kid, trying to deal with family life, which was crazy, trying to deal with what's going on right now in the life. I mean, I don't recognize anything anymore. It's very chaotic. Like the chaos is very well sewn into everything now. And so D&D continues to be this escape, but in a kind of an odd way, in that I do still like to, like for example, I'm talking about this, I will incorporate this knowledge now into my D&D game. I will do it. I can't help it. I find it interesting. I love examining things. Now, and I also can completely now understand why people don't like that. Why people just want dragons to be dragons, wizards to be wizards. They don't want all this stuff in their game. And that's I think one thing that really draws me to the OSR, frankly, is there's a lot less of that stuff going on. But that being said, I understand now why people are being driven to the things that they're being driven to. I think maybe, I don't know why I haven't been. I've been driven to play D&D. Like I say, I've got way too many books, way more books than I actually need, because I'm chasing a high, and I'll admit that. So I did quit smoking. Did smoke for a while. I managed to quit that, but I'll never quit D&D. I love D&D. It's not happening, and I'm going to continue to chase the high, because I don't see any bad effects from it, except on my pocketbook maybe. But that's about it, and I'm willing to deal with that. I mean, what the hell else is money for? You spend it on the things you love. I love D&D. I don't see any real downsides to it. But it cleared up a mystery. This first chapter, I guess what I'm trying to get at, and I needed to get all of that out so you could understand where I'm coming from, is that first chapter really help explain to me why it is because it's always been fascinating to me. I mean, people will tell me, oh, this is what a dragon's like, this kind of dragon and that kind of dragon. I'm like, what do you mean? Doesn't it depend on the world you're in, what kind of dragon it is? And for a great many people, no, it doesn't. They want everything to be stable. They want it all to be the same. They want to be able to go from this game to this game to this game. And it's all the same stuff. They know exactly what a tiefling is, a halfling, a drow. They know exactly what all these things are, how they're going to behave. They know what a gold dragon is, a white dragon, a black dragon, a red dragon. And I love to mess all that up. And I think now I understand why people get so upset. And basically that's what this video is about. I get it. It's too much. It's like you need to escape. It's a drug, and you're not doing drugs. You're doing D&D, and my hat's off to you. Way to go. That's way better. Way better than doing drugs and doing all that stuff. And that's really great. And I'm really appreciative and happy to be part of that community. So I guess that's all I'm saying. I mean, I guess that's the point of this video. The point of this video is just I learned something. I learned something from this book. It's an amazing book. I cannot recommend it highly enough. So far. I mean, I'm not very deep into it, but so far, like obviously, as you can tell, I've gotten an incredible amount out of it. So that's all. That's my video. I hope you enjoy. I hope it's not too heavy for you. I'm laughing because I'm scared it's gonna be, and I don't mean it to be. It's not. I don't mean it to be. This is just part of my own personal journey. Everybody's stuff is different. I don't mean everybody's gonna be seeing exactly the things I do. I understand that. This is just my perception of what's going on. If you disagree with me, great. I hope you tell me about it in the comments. I love reading the comments. So many people have left wonderful big comments going into history or going into explanations of things or explaining their experience to me. I absolutely love those comments. I read all of them. Thank you so much for leaving those comments. I really appreciate them. And I would love to hear any well thought out comments on this topic, any experiences. If you disagree with me, hey, that's not a problem. But please explain why you disagree with me. Because I would like to hear why. That's what I'm interested in. All right, great. Thank you very much for getting to the end of this. If you have, I really appreciate it. This has been a fun video. And I will be back with another one shortly. All right. Take care, everybody.